morning, afternoon, and evening to our listeners across the globe. This is in12d, Season 3, Episode 28. And we welcome you today. We have a special guest in the studio with us. And my co-host will my apologies. This is one of those days. It's been a while. Susie, welcome.
Thank you, Ramsey. Well, here I am in Ireland, and I'm very excited about today's podcast because our guest is somebody who I've met many times on my travels around the UK, and I'm just fascinated by her life, her work, and her story. So I'm so grateful that she has said yes to come and join us today. All the way from Nottingham in England. I warmly extend a welcome to Alison Knox. Alison is the artist at Everyday Angels Art, and she's an angels advocate. I suppose that's the best way to describe her. But we're going to go into this amazing story to find out, how do the angels show up and knock on your door, get your attention, and I suppose transform or the direction that your life has been going in. As you know, every episode we look at people who seemingly have ordinary lives, but then whose lives take another turn and they become rather extraordinary. So, Alison, where do you want to jump in on your story to get us started with that extraordinary life that you lead?
Well, I think it's fair to say that although I might have an extraordinary life, it also has a lot of normality to it. So I mentioned earlier, 10 minutes ago, I was putting the bins out, feeding the dog, sorting the fox food out and getting my husband's tea ready. So it's kind of, this normality has to exist in amongst all the extraordinary stuff. And that's just the way it is for me. There's no glamour involved. So for me, it's quite hard to pinpoint exactly where this all started. It probably started when I was pre-born, before I even arrived. I suspect I signed up to some kind of contract and didn't look at the small print. When it all kicked off it was really in 2001 that the first angel came through as a painting. But prior to that, 10 years to the day, in fact, there was work being done, I do assume, on me to get me kind of roadworthy for the job. And a lot of it is, I've written a book called According to My Angels. I'm not plugging the book particularly, but just to sort of say, it's what we can share today. It's like the tip of a massive angelic iceberg, because the story is not a linear one. It's like a tide. It ebbs and flows, and it goes off in rivulets, and sometimes it dries up a little bit and then it goes off again. And I'm never really too sure exactly where it's going to take me.
But it's amazing. You didn't have like a kind of a background in angels. You weren't reading about them. You weren't studying about them. I love the book. I love the stories in the book. I highly recommend the book, by the way. So where would you want to jump in?
I so was not looking for angels. I was kind of aware they existed. I'd seen them in shops and things, and I'd seen them on, famous paintings and whatnot. But I'd never really sort of thought about them as anything to do with me. I was not brought up in any kind of religious framework or anything. And so, let's say a series of events had happened from around sort of 1990. It was triggered by a major redundancy, which kind of brought me to my knees, really. And in the following 10 years from that, a lot of stuff happened. I mean, major stuff that made me sort of cut and tack on my life and how I was living it. And one of the things that happened was I was introduced to a woman who was a Pilates teacher. I felt I'd gone to Pilates because my physical body had become so crushed and diminished. It needed to be brought back again and get my core back. Anyway, Rachel, who was my tutor, she had a few other things up her sleeve. And one of those things that she had up her sleeve was Reiki. And she mentioned Reiki to me. And I was like, oh, really? How can a woolly blanket and a bit of a lie down do any good to anybody? I was very scathing. I sat like this for quite a lot of my angelic education, with my lips pursed and my arms folded, very resistant. Anyway, something must have stuck in here, and I found a phone number of a lady who practiced Reiki, and I wrote it on the back of my hand. It was in an eyebrow pencil because that's all I had in my bag. I wrote it down, and then I thought I better give her a ring fairly quickly because it'll wear off and I won't know who she was. So I rang the number and I went for a treatment with this lady. And I was absolutely blown away. We were in a beauty salon in just one of the outskirts of Nottingham, and there were two Tracy and Sharon sitting there chatting about nails and how lovely it all was and everything. And there were, salon talk. And I was lying there under this woolly blanket, and this lady came in. She looked like a nurse. It looked like she was dressed in a nurse's uniform. I thought, crikey, this looks serious. Anyway, it turns out she was a nurse. I didn't realise Reiki practitioners had other jobs as well. I just thought they did that thing and wafted around on the little clouds. I knew nothing. Anyway, she did the treatment on me, and do you know what? I saw colours that don't exist. Wow. I felt colours. I smelled and experienced colours, and the vibration of colours that I have no name for. I can't help you with that because I haven't got a name for them. But it was an enormity, and it was absolutely just blew me away. And for 35 quid, I thought it was the best money I'd ever spent. It was absolutely staggering. So I went back to my Pilates teacher and I told her about this. And also I'd seen these funny squiggles like Chinese writing. And she asked me about it. And I said, well, I can draw them for you. And I drew these squiggles. And she said, they are basically Reiki symbols. Have you ever seen these before? And I said, well, no, it was just, this is what kind of came in my head when this colour thing was happening. And she said, I think you need to take the Reiki attunement. Can't see why. Anyway, she gave me the number of a Reiki practitioner called Chris Parks. He works in the traditional style of Reiki. And I put it in my bag and I forgot about it for absolutely ages. It's just a little piece of paper. And one day this piece of paper presented itself out of my bag just at a time when I'd got a spare weekend had come up. And I thought to myself, oh, I'll give him a ring, see if he's got a place going. So he had, and I went up and I got onto this course. And there's this group of amazing people, all giving their reasons why they're there. All very impressive. And then it comes to me and I'm saying, I have no idea. I've absolutely no idea why I'm here. And if I don't like it, I'm going home at lunchtime, if that's all right. Anyway, Chris, bless him, he put up with me. And you did the attunements, and he said to me, nothing will be the same after this. Everything will shift. Whole consciousness will shift, and people will move out of your life. Things will change, things will fall away, things will come together. And I thought, I'm not really sure I'm ready for people to be out of my life. I like the people I've got, thank you very much. I was expecting them all to be dropping dead or, something terrible happening. But actually what happened was he was absolutely right. Because the energy changed. People they just didn't show up anymore, or, they just weren't there, or they didn't, I don't know. It just all happened very naturally. However, what didn't happen very naturally was a massive reaction. A burning, and my whole physical body was burning. The palms of my hands seemed to opened up, and I remember it was like, it must have been the palm chakras, but I didn't know about chakras in those days. These things opened up and my hands were itching and bleeding and everything was just on fire. So I did what any normal sensible person would do. I went to the doctor and explained my symptoms, and he said, well, what have you been doing? I said, well, I went on this Reiki course. I think it might be that. And he went, there's nothing the matter with you. You're just a bit odd. Sent me away. So take a couple of paracetamol if you feel a bit painful. And that was his best advice to me. He was having none of it. So off I went. What that Reiki did was it opened me up. It helped me to understand how to handle energy, how to hold energy. The whole painful burning thing eventually wore off, and I was back to normal before I know it. But it was very, very physical, and the top of my head felt like I was wearing, literally, you say crown chakra, I felt like I was wearing a massive crown or something on my head. And at times it was really, I'm sure people must have noticed I was wearing something. It was very, very physical, as I say. So fortunately, I had good people around me. And so people came into my life, people showed me things, people explained things to me. And one of the people who came into my life was a lady who she worked a very high level, but very, very quietly. And she took me on and was like my spiritual mother, let's say. So around this same time, so this happened around sort of 2000-ish. And then in the November the 22nd it was of 2001, I had what I can only describe as a spontaneous awakening. That's what I've understood it to be now. And I was in my studio upstairs here at home, and I was writing a letter to this woman who'd become my spiritual mother. And as I was writing this letter to her, I felt a compulsion, an absolute compulsion, that I needed to go and do some painting. Well, I'm anyway quite arty, so I've always got paints and things around, but I found myself in a kind of expanded state, massively expanded. And I was creating something in front of me, which I had no idea what it was. I didn't sort of think, I know what I'll do, I'll paint an angel. There was no thought to it at all. It happened. And this image on the page was not, I wasn't able to focus on it. I couldn't catch what it was. I was just aware I was doing it. And then I had my hands over it like this in a triangle. I heard myself saying 3 times, I call on the divine light to bless and empower this angel. And I'm like, what angel? I didn't know I'd done one.
Wow.
And my sight came, not my sight, but my focus came back. And I could see I had created something that looked, if I had to describe it as anything, it looked like a bit of an angel. It was a very embryonic thing. It was very loose and childlike. And I thought, I'm going to send that to this lady because she knows about these things and she might like it put on the fridge with a magnet or something like that, like you does with your drawings. And so that's what I did. I sent it to her with the letter. And the letter just said, the bottom of the letter said, P.S. I did this bit of an angel today. What do you think? Sort of thing. Anyway, she phoned me up and she said, do you understand what you've done here? I had no idea. And she explained to me that this was the beginning of my life's work. This is what I'd come to do. And I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. And she told me something which I didn't understand at the time, but I never forgot. And what she told me was, through your work, the light of humanity and the light of the divine will be unified. We'll bring those 2 things together. Really? I'm not sure about that, but I'll give it a go. And
that was the first time that you had painted. So
first time
this way.
I had painted in that way. It was watercolor and a kind of glittery glue stuff had made the angel. It was very embryonic and very loose. It was not like now, the angels have refined, but they have to start somewhere with me, and that's what they've learned, that, you know, they have to sort of like ease me into things, and then, you know, I get it, and then we're off up and running. So that was the first angel that came. So if I can catapult us forward a bit,
Yeah,
there's a story in the book that I know, Susie, you and I have discussed this before, but in the book, on page 252, there is a story about the angel at the convent. And
I love this story. This is a very special story.
I chose to share this story because it has so many threads in it. It brings an understanding to something that was happening. It felt to me like a very fast pace, and it was a massive challenge to me. So in this chapter, there's a little quote I've found, which I preface this chapter with, by Dag Hammarskjöld. I can't say his surname, so apologies to Dag. But he says, there is a point at which everything becomes simple, and there is no longer any question of choice, because all you have staked will be lost if you look back. Life's point of no return. And I use that to preface this chapter, because that is exactly how it was for me. So what happened was, in 2003, I felt that I needed to go on a retreat somewhere. I wasn't sure what a retreat was, and I didn't know where I was going to go. And I was asking round. By this time, I got quite a few spiritual friends, and I was asking round, and I got lots of very exciting answers, which none of them resonated. And so I met a guy who was an ex-Franciscan monk called Sean. And Sean was talking to me about a retreat he'd been on in North Wales at a Catholic convent. And as soon as he started talking to me about this convent, I was absolutely sure that's where I needed to go. And it was a great surprise to me and a great challenge, because I'm not religious. I have absolutely no experience of Catholic faith or protocols or nuns or anything like that. But I knew that's where I had to go. And he gave me the details of this place, and he gave me the name of the sister and Mother Superior, and told me to give her a ring. And so I did. And I suggested to them that I would like to come and spend some time with them. And she said, yes, of course. When would you like to come? And I think the date I chose was the 13th of April that year. It was a weekend. And I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going there to do, but, you know, that should cover it. And then I looked at my diary properly, and I realised it was Easter. And I thought, oh my God, I've made a mistake there, because nuns will have lots of things to be doing at Easter. I'm sure that comes into the whole thing. I phoned them back and I said, look, I think we've made a mistake with the dates. And she said, don't be ridiculous. Of course you're coming. So that was me told. And I got a sense that I had to take my tools, and the tools were basically my painting gear and my some canvases and paints, and that was it really. So I packed my van and I waved goodbye to the husband, and I said, I think I'll be back in a few days, but I can't be sure. I don't know what I'm going for. So I drove up to North Wales to this convent, Sisters of the Poor Clares. And what I hadn't appreciated was that this particular order of sisters were they practiced Reiki, that they had lavender bushes they made oil from, and they were just very simple folk who lived a very simple life and were very open. And so I'm there knocking on the door, coming with all my paints and everything, and I was shown very graciously to my apartment. It was a small apartment which had a garden on the back of it, and that particular weekend was glorious. You know, one of those weekends where the bees are all out on the bushes and the butterflies are just thinking about having a flutter around, and the sun was shining. It was absolutely glorious. And I opened the doors to my apartment because it had a sort of like a French windows, and I opened it up to the garden, and I put all the furniture outside, and I went out and took all my paints and everything out there, and I just disappeared into this Kairos time that was stretchy and bendy, and I don't know what happened, but I was gone, and I was painting, and there was this big canvas and a series of small ones, but the big canvas was the main focus, and I worked on this canvas I don't know how long for. I got me painting pinny on and my flip-flops, and I was just working away, and it got to a point where I just felt stop. It was implicit stop, and so I stopped, and I thought I'll pop in and put the kettle on, perhaps have a natural break. So I popped out, and I went back into the apartment, and as I walked into the apartment, something caught my attention, and this is how the subtlety of these things work for me. So you can be shown things. Often people say to me, I want to see an angel. How do I see an angel? I think, well, how do you know you've not? What are you looking for? What's your expectation? And what level of attention are you paying to the detail? Anyway, I went back into the apartment, and in the corner of this apartment, right in the far corner, I saw this light. It was so tiny, but so intense and bright. And as I looked at it, it expanded. And it filled the room with this pearlescent light. The whole room was just awash with this pearlescent light. And then it kind of coalesced into an angel. And the angel was in the room there, standing in front of me, about the same size as me. And I was like, oh, okay.
We have that image. I think Ramsey's going to show it. Yeah, it's so defined, isn't it?
Like, this is one of about 14 images that I took. So it was a bit of a setup job really by the angel, because I am not a clever photographer. I haven't got any. And the important thing is, this was 2003 as well, so there was no digital involved. What I had in my bag at the time was an APS camera with a bit of used film in it. And this angel had instructed me that I must take some photographs. And so I took a series of snaps. But that was not until I'd had a bit of a conversation. So I thought, I've got a question. My question was, what is my relationship to God? I had to assume I'd got one by this point, and I was not, as I say, I was not educated in any religious format, so I didn't know, but I had to assume I got one. And the angel gave me the first part of the message, and she said, I say she because the energy was very feminine, and she said, God is being.
Wow.
And then being is enough. And so I said, thank you. So it was 3 words and 3 words. Oh, okay, I can remember that. And then
to clarify, Alison, when you have the question and then you hear the answer, is that's kind of more telepathic. It's not necessarily.
Yes. It's not an auditory thing.
Yeah, it's not the room.
Yes, good point. It's a cellular level. It's like I've always known this. It's there. It's implanted. It's like it's almost like an implanting whole of the message. And so, it was there, and it was resonating. Sometimes like when you get, if you've been listening to very loud music at a club or something, and you come out and you're still vibrating, it was like that, but without the music. And then she instructed me to take these photographs, which I did. And if you notice in the photograph, I think you probably see it on. There's on the one I have here, if you can see that, there's a tiny little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there's these bits of furniture. This was a painting which had been done by one of the sisters. And so it anchors this. In some of the other images I've got, the painting's more visible, but it anchors this experience in a very particular place where it could not have been anywhere else. And having had that conversation, and then she kind of finished with me for the moment. The room she dissipated again into the white light, and then just disappeared. And I thought, oh, okay, right, I'll go and have my cup of coffee now. And I went and had a cup of coffee.
You'd say you needed it by then.
Well, I was desperate for a wee. And I was like, oh my God. Anyway, I went back into the garden and I finished the painting. And the painting is now at Gorton Monastery, but it's a depiction of two angels flying one above the other. It's seemingly down a chasm. And the title of the painting is The Angels of Here and Now. It's a very large acrylic on canvas. And I finished that painting that very afternoon. I mean, it sounds like, I rattled it out, but it must have been lifetimes of work just condensed down into this few moments. So I finished that.
I'm typing up the title. I just want to make sure I have it correct. The Angels Are Here and Now. Is that what it is?
Angels of Here and Now.
Of Here and Now. Excuse me. I'm going to put that in the chat so that we can follow it. Brilliant.
So something again compelled me to go down to the chapel, and the chapel was just down the corridor. And the sisters had said to me when I got there, you can go in if you want to, but you don't have to, you can do what you like. And so I went down to the chapel. I didn't know what to do because, as I say, I've got no protocol for these things. And I went down in my pinny and I sat in a pew that was pointed out to me by the sun that came through the window. It was like a shaft of light, like a film. And it hit this pew and it pointed this pew out to me. And it would have been rude to sit anywhere else because that's where I was meant to sit. And I sat in this shaft of light and I just sat there and I didn't know what I was there for. And then this bird flew in through the window. It was a little tiny wren and it sat that far from me and it sang its little heart out, just sang.
Wow.
And then it turned around and it flew off again. And then I was aware again of this angel behind me. I didn't see it this time, but it was definitely the presence of this angel was there. And the angel asked me to ask for what I really needed in life. And I asked, please let me be sustained in my work. And it's like, the genie in the three wishes. If you get it wrong, your leg falls off. And I was terrified of answering. But my higher self must have come up with that answer because it was quite a good one. And then I thought that's it, really. That was concluded. And I just said, thank you. And I got up and I walked out. And in the foyer, just outside, was a postcard stand. And the sisters were artists and they would do these little cartoon type drawings and things. It was really quite sweet. And there was a little booklet in there. And it had like a little religious picture on the front, but it was hand drawn. And I picked it up and I just opened it and it just said, God is enough. So that was my third part of my message. So I got God is being is enough, God is enough. That was it. And even with my limited grasp of divinity, I know 3 times 3 is quite important. And so that was it. That was it. Job done. And I went back to my room and I don't know. I didn't go to the bedroom that night. I slept in the room where the angel had been. And there was some kind of visit in the night where a being, a benevolent being came and patted me down and asked if I was okay. It definitely wasn't one of the sisters. Asked if I was okay and took me in, and I slept on the sofa under my dog blanket that I'd got in the back of the car. And the next morning, sister came to see how I was, and I told her what had happened. I was a bit embarrassed to tell her because I thought she probably thinks I've got no right to any of this with me not being qualified. And she just said, "You're truly blessed."
Wow.
And I think I am. And that was it. And so that was it. I didn't have to stay because the job was done. And so I got in the van and I drove back home. And on the way home, I stopped at Sainsbury's because they've got a developer. At the time, they had one of these super snap things. And I put my film in on the 1 hour development. I did a bit of shopping and I came back and picked the film up. And the girl on the counter said, "Can I ask you something?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "It is an angel, isn't it?"
Wow, I've gotten shivers.
I said, "Yes, it is." Then she said, "Thank you." And that was it. We didn't converse further. She didn't quiz me on it. She just accepted it and thanked me. And that was that. So I came home with my packet of snaps and I showed them to my husband, who's quite, I mean, he's quite practical on these sort of things. You know, he would know if I'd been messing around with cameras. And so I said to him, "What do you think?" And he said, "God," he said, "you don't have the capability to have done this technically." He said, "It must have been what you say it is," because he said, "You wouldn't have a clue how to set something like this up. I mean, I can barely manage on tech now. But back then, I had no idea." And so he said, "What are you going to do with them?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I know what I'm not going to do with them." I thought, I'm not going to sell them to the news of the world, you know, angel spotted in Welsh convent. You know, that would have been a bit rude. So I didn't. But what I did want to do,
It's a very sacred experience. Like even
Yeah.
sharing it with another person must have been almost kind of breaking a spell in a way, like of that kind of
and
experience.
I really felt I had to be very discerning. I wouldn't say careful, discerning about who I shared this story with. And so the first person on my list I wanted to share the story with was this lady who'd been my spiritual teacher. And so I phoned her up and I said, "Look, I've been on this retreat and I'm back now and I've got something I really, really want to show you because it's really important." And so I went up to see her and she basically denied me. She basically told me I'd made it all up and that if I continued with this delusion that I'd met an angel, then my reputation would be in shreds and nobody would ever believe a word I said ever again. I was like, hang on a minute. It was like I've been kicked in the stomach, and the person I trusted the most in the whole world, you know, with my soul, if you like, was basically telling me I was telling lies. And every which way I tried to turn the conversation, you know, I said, "Well, take the pictures out of the equation. What about the story I've just told you? What about the experience? What about how it's left me feeling?" None of it. She basically chucked me out, sent me home packing. And I got home. I was absolutely devastated. I cannot tell you how devastated I was because I loved her and I trusted her. 100%. I trusted her. And so I tried phoning her several times to, you know, try again. And she was just having none of it. And I had to make a choice. It was like a bereavement. I had to make a choice. Did I stand in my own truth of what I knew and had experienced, or did I capitulate to her, who I knew to be a very highly evolved being with many years of experience, far more than I had, and who I had loved? And the choice was simple. I had to stick with my truth. And so that was that. I didn't speak to her again. And it was excruciatingly painful. And and shocking, and I couldn't understand it for many, many years. I couldn't understand it. So,
But you think it was deliberate to put you on a firm standing into who you are? Like, it's your truth, and nobody can take it from you?
What I realized was many years later that she had set me free. She had forced me to fly on my own and to stand in that truth, because she knew along the way there would be detractors, there would be challengers, there would be people who would perhaps want to pull the rug from under my spiritual feet and question my ability, or, you know, my right to have had that experience. There was lots of, at that time, at that stage, I used to attend a lot of mind, body, spirit events around the country, and it was quite a competitive world. You know, I'm more spiritual than you, kind of thing. It could be a bit like that. And so, I was very discerning who I showed the photographs to, but the people who I did show the photographs to were incredibly respectful of them and really accepting. And so I was, for a long time, as I said, I was very baffled, but that was what it came down to. It was like, you know, the mother lion chucking the cub out to go and, you know, make its own territory and learn its own way. It was that, really. And it was 7 years later, and I was driving up to the monastery. There was an event on up there, and I got the sense of this angel again in the back of the car. I didn't see it, but I just got the sense of it. And the question was put to me, what are you going to do about it now? It's like, now is the time. You've got to come out with these, got to show them to the world. You know, 7 years under your belt, you should know what you're doing by now. And so I said, well, how would you expect me to do that? What do you want me to do? And then it was like, well, one of your favorite tracks is 100,000 Angels by Bliss. So why don't we get 100,000 images out there in the world? I was like, what? How am I supposed to do that? And I was shown it's not about physically doing it. You can put it on your website and people find the images. So on the website, the story, the angel at the convent, is there. It's the printed story is on the website, and all the images are on the website, and you can look at them as much as you like. And I also have a postcard, which you've seen, which if I send a book out to somebody, or the ones at the monastery, they have a copy of this in the page 252 to mark the book. Yeah.
I've got mine.
And on the back of the postcard, it gives you the website page as well. So
can we just get to the point where, like, it's been an incredible journey, just that start, like, you know what I mean? And so it obviously keeps unfolding as you go along, and there must be a lovely sense of kind of familiarity now, and comfort, and kind of trusting and knowing, you know what I mean? Because you really did have to take a kind of a quantum leap of faith, trusting that this is your path. This is this kind of divine will guiding you on your unique and individual pathway. And I suppose, at what point then did you feel ready to start to commit the stories to the book? Like, when you wrote the book, you know, that's really, like, there's no hiding once you got the book out there, I guess. Like, so
what I realized was that over the years, when I did the mind, body, spirit events, when I first started out, I shared a table with another lady who she'd give me a little bit on the end to use to sell some of my little paintings and things that I did. She's in the book as well, Gabrielle. And then over time, I ended up booking my own tables, and I did events all over the country. And I was often asked to give a talk, and I've got so many stories, and we've only got an hour, but there's so many stories about my encounters with the angels, and the things that they got me doing, and the lessons they've taught me. And I would tell these stories, if I was asked to give a talk for half an hour or 45 minutes, I'd fill the time easily. And there was always images around to share the adventure with. And I realized that, I needed to start writing these stories down, and I just casually would write them down. And eventually I got quite an archive of stories. And so I started to compile them into a book. And the first stages of the book, it was not, it wasn't called According to My Angels. It had a different title. But I sent a draft copy of the first few chapters to a good friend of mine, whose mother, I'd forgotten, but at the time, but her mother was published by Hay House. And so I trusted her, I sent her this, and I said, look, just read through this and see if you can hear my voice in it. Does it sound like it's me telling this story? And she phoned me up and she said, I've just had this land on my doorstep. She said, my mum's here with her publishing agent. Would you mind if I show it to her? And I said, oh, no, please do. Anyway, the publishing agent phoned me and she said, look, this is amazing. She said, can you finish the book? Can you write the book? And I said, well, yeah, I suppose so, yeah. She said, but you're going to have to come up with another title for it, she said, because the title's rubbish. It won't mean anything to anybody. So I said, okay, we'll leave that one with me. So when I wrote the book, the main part of it, I was on holiday in Turkey. And I wrote the book at night. So I'd go to bed about 10 o'clock for a couple of hours. I'd wake up, I'd spend the night writing, and it was literally just, it was coming just like a download. And on the other side of of the thing, there was an editor who had been appointed by this agent. And I would send each night, I would send my draft through to the editor, and she would do her editing thing. And by the time I got back off holiday, I'd got a book finished.
Wow. And
it was stuff I knew, it was because it was stuff I knew. It was just there. And it came together really, really quite easily, or with ease, let's put it that way. It came together with ease. And she was so excited about it, this agent. She wanted to get it out there, and she took it to some book fairs, and she took it around all the people who knew her really well. And they all said, wow, this is amazing. We don't know what to do with it. Nobody took it up. She was absolutely gutted. She took me down to London to meet one of these publishers, and we had a lovely time. And they said, well, we don't know really where to put you. Okay, fine. Well, maybe I'm not meant to be put anywhere. So I took my book home, my draft, and I said to the agent, look, please don't fret about it. When the time comes, we'll know what's meant to happen with it. When the time came, I was just something I came through on my emails, and it was from the self-publishing side of Hay House, Balboa Press. And they were offering these packages to authors to get their books published. And I looked at it and I thought, well, actually, this feels like it's the right way to go. I've got the book, it's here. It's all in draft form. All I need to do is put it through the system. I didn't need anything. I didn't need them to edit it. It had been edited. It was all there. And it was timing. It was just, trusting the timing. I could have got myself ever so upset about all that, all that rejection, people loving it, but not wanting it. But it wasn't meant to be done like that. And so that's how the book came to be published. And the title, According to My Angels, came because early on in this journey, when I very first started working with the angels, they used to hijack me something rotten. And I'd be going about my normal everyday business, and suddenly they'd be like demanding me to do something and go somewhere. And my life wasn't my own, and I was feeling a bit sort of, a bit fed up about it, to be honest. And I got to a point where I had to call them together, whoever they were. I sat at my kitchen table with packet hobnobs and a cup of tea, which is usually the best way of getting things done. And I sat down and I said, right, you lot, just gather around wherever you are or whoever you are. So we can't carry on like this. If you want me to be in service to you, if you want me to do this job, we've got to strike an accord. That was the word I used, an accord. And I could feel them around the table going, she really is hacked off. We better have a listen to this. And I said to them, I'm happy to work for you, but I've got to retain my human independence. I can't be at your beck and call the whole time. And so we need to work this out. And so we came to an agreement, and that was basically the accord we struck. And we got on quite well after that. It started to, fall into shape. And according obviously has another by the word of my angels. So in the book, the way the book is written, I write the story. I give my account of understanding as to what had happened, and then the angels have a bit of a say as to what they think it was all about. And it is really very much a collaboration. And as he said, I am the angel's advocate. That's how they.
What is the picture you're showing, Ramsey? I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
nobody was expecting that.
Hey, that's Lumina.
Devon, isn't it?
Because, pardon?
That's a picture of Lumina, is it not?
Devon.
That's in Devon. Because I was going to ask, has anybody else experienced the energies of the angel with you, or is it just you? And all of a sudden I had to look through the pictures. I go, there's something there. And I know we sat in a circle and you did the meditation, and we all felt something, each one in their own way. And I couldn't remember what was happening. And I pulled out this picture, and I thought I'll share it with everybody. Yeah. Yes. So it was an awesome experience. That picture, that painting. Sorry, it's not a picture. It's a painting. It's one amazing depiction of an angel coming from the other side. It's beautiful. It's beyond beautiful.
It's an expression. It's the way I describe the artworks they are an expression of the divine. They use the language of color, the light and the language of color as their expression. And I don't try to persuade anybody of anything with these artworks. So when people come to my workshops, or in groups like we've been, and we talk, as you rightly say, everybody has their own experience of what this means to them. And some of my greatest moments, if you like, have been when I've been oblivious to what's going on, absolutely oblivious to what's going on. And how are we doing for time? Are we okay?
We're doing good. We've about 12 minutes to go, so we can go a little bit over.
So,
yeah.
Let me, just for example, I was at a Mind Body Spirit event one time, and it was one of those very busy halls, people coming and going. And I got the table set up, and there was a good selection of angelic artworks on there. And there was a gentleman who of older years who had walked past the table several times, and he'd kind of collared me, and he said to me, "Is that an angel?" I said, "Well, yeah, it is." And he literally broke down and crumpled in my arms, and I had to get him to a chair and sit him down. And I said, what's happened? What, are you okay? And he said, I have to tell you, he said, all my life, he said, I have been searching. All my life I've been searching for the connection, for the moment. He said, and today, he said, I was walking past your table. He said, you were talking to somebody else. He said, so I couldn't talk to you. He said, but you were engaged. And he said, and one of these angels spoke to me. And he said, it touched me in such a profound way. He said, my heart stopped. He said, I thought I was going to die. And I said, oh, well, wow. And he said, never in his whole life had he had that experience. And he said, and it was so pure because it was unbidden. So it wasn't me sort of giving him a spiel about these angels or, even having any connection with him whatsoever. He found it himself. And when I asked him which angel it was, it had a title. It was called Soul Mirror. And the message of the angel was about looking into your own self and seeing the beauty and the light there. And when I read the message to him, there was more tears and more crumpling happened. And it was just pure because I had nothing to do with it. And that's how I know.
That's another part of this whole experience, I suppose, that we need to make sure people realize is, okay, we're very interested in your own personal story and this incredible journey of your own, I suppose, development in the work that you're creating. And like outside of the painting, I know from different events that I've been at where you were there, Alison, words come too. And what you clarified before we went live was that they don't necessarily all come at the same time. So the work emerges, and then in its own divine time, the words follow, and the titles or the names and so on. And so it's almost like you're like the press secretary for the angel that's after coming into being in the canvas. It's like, now this is what you're going to put out there, but it does seem to have a really, like, anytime I've experienced them with you at numerous different events and retreats and gatherings that we've been at, it sort of brings an order, or a sort of it always brings a sort of whether it's a focus or a holding of the space. Like there's something, it brings something. I can't really put my finger on it in terms of words, but it does kind of bring things to a whole new level, let's say. It kind of gears us all up a little bit more. So do you want to speak a little bit to like those sort of experiences where the words come and how it impacts the people that are present or that are receiving it?
Well, yeah, it's a very hard thing to define, really, because I know that the words are not my words because of how they're received. So sometimes, as you say, the words come after the artwork, and sometimes they come before the artwork. They're like the herald, and I have to. It's almost like, I suppose, I've never physically been with child or pregnant, but it's like a kind of pregnancy. I can feel like a build-up of something, and then it kind of is there. It's whole, and it's not for me to muck about with what's been said. If I type something up, and then I think, that could sound a bit better if I do it like this, then what you sound was the screen would just collapse. And when I reinstated it, it would be back to what they'd given me. And so the way the word, there's something about the cadence of the words and the energy of the words, and even to the extent of how the words are written on the page. So quite often when people see my writings, they'll see they're kind of centered in a certain way on the page, and there's certain fonts that I've been guided to use that hold the energy better. And in the book, there is a whole page which explains why I have to write things the way that I write them. And you can see on the page the difference if I write Everyday Angels in the approved font, which is papyrus, and then if I write it in something like Times or Calibri, it looks completely different and it has no feel to it. And the lettering, I have to use a certain upper and lower case lettering in the words, and only the angels know how that imprint works. I've learned not to question it, to just do what's been asked of me, and that's then it's right. But quite often, so for example, this painting behind me here, this is a version of an angel called Yes. And the message of this angel is quite short, but I've got it on a postcard size one here. It's a bit shiny. I'm sorry, the lighting in here is a bit funny, and the card it's printed on is actually sparkly. But if I can just read the message of this. When your heart opens to the unimaginable yes, you will conceive. When every breath taken is yes, you will see. When you live only to exemplify yes, you will know. When your yes resonates from the infinite to the absolute, you will be. Now, when I got that message through for this angel, I had no clue what it meant. It's taken me ages to unravel it and work it out and to understand what it is, what my understanding of it is. And it is a challenge of acceptance. What I can tell you is that the original version of this painting, which was a much bigger piece, was on an easel in my workroom when a friend of mine came round who was interviewing me for a radio broadcast, and it was not even finished. It was still wet, and she was basically zapped by this angel. The connection was made, and that she loved it. She loved it, and she must have talked to her partner about it at the time, and he phoned me up and he asked me if it was for sale, and I said, well, it can be. I said, it's not a pocket money price, but if you want to buy it, I'm sure we can arrange something. So we sorted it out. Anyway, at that point, I don't think I had the message. The message came in that transaction time, and the message was called, this was the message. And then it turned out that when he bought the painting for my friend, it was as a kind of proposal gift for marriage.
Oh, interesting.
And so they married. Yeah. And the angel is up in their house, and it's there all the time, and it's wonderful. And every time I see it there, it's almost like meeting an old friend. I say, oh, hello, how are you? How are you getting on? How's things? And I don't have a kind of ownership of these angels. I mean, the one that you showed, Ramsey, the Lumina, I mean, that stayed at the retreat we were at. That stayed there because it had a job to do there. It wasn't for me to sort of package it back up and bring it home. It had gone there to do a job, and so it stays. And as far as I'm aware, it's still doing a job. From the news that I get, and that's great. And I don't have to be checking in on it every 5 minutes. How's it getting on? I just trust it's getting on and doing its thing.
So not only are you painting them, and you're taking the dictation of their, the words that accompany them. You're also delivering them. They're going in the back of the lovely car. They're heading off with you, and then sometimes they have to remain wherever it is you've taken them, and it's like that's so much trust. Like you have just impeccable trust with the work.
They tested me on my acquisitiveness very early on, and I must have passed that test. I do remember how they did it. It's in the book. Honestly, this conversation has been so. It's been so lovely to be able to share just this tiny little fraction of as I said, this massive mountainous iceberg of angelic connection. And they sort of introduce it as a warm embrace of the divine. And so that feeling, when when we're in these workshops and sharing the words and the images, there is a sense of kind of like this sort of arms around and like the safe space held. It's always been very much an invitation. That's what I love about
the real holding of the space. I remember in Devon, like we really went outside the confines of time and space as we would normally understand them, and it suddenly, like, you're in it, and then suddenly you're when you're out. It's like it kicks you out. You're done. It's like booked, done.
Yeah.
But there we are.
Yeah. And
Brilliant.
I have to learn, not to kind of, hold on so tight. I mean, oh God, that's taken me down a whole other rabbit hole of what they gave me. But they've taught me how to let go of things and how to be okay about that. There are times for keeping and times for letting go. But to just be able to share, just a snippet of what this is about, because everyday angels, it is what it says on the packet. I truly believe for everybody that they're just embedded in the everyday life of whatever life you live. They are embedded in that. It's not a precious. It's not a sort of precious thing that you've got to go to anywhere in particular to meet, a special angel. You can do it if you want, but it's not necessary to sit on a cushion on a mountaintop. They turn up in the
They're
kitchen.
every day.
Yeah, it's
I
this.
Love that. I love
roll
that.
your sleeves up. They're northern. Mine angels are quite northern. They
I know there's so much more we could, unpack here, and I'm going to just be brazen and bold and say, look, we're going to have to get you back on, Alison, because I know there's some other stories, and they're just so inspiring for people. And if I even throw in the word the archeons, I've been at meditations where you've had these huge paintings, and then there's the whole soundscape that accompanies it. And so, like, I know it is really the tip of the iceberg is where what we've kind of touched and covered on today. So hopefully we'll do that again. We'll be able to go again another time and go another bit further in,
And me and the angels would absolutely love to. And I'm sure, there are more stories that never even made it to the book because they hadn't happened at that point. But
I guess there's another book in the writing there at some point, is there?
Well, there's a second book like ticking away there. But would it be interesting to see, sort of how people have, who've been party to this podcast, how people find it, what comments come back. What level of interest there is, and if somebody reads the book, which chapter would you like me to talk about?
We could. This could be a series.
A series. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really, really honoured that you've asked me to have a chat tonight, because it's
it was a blast, and thank you so much for being with us. And by the way, to the listeners that can't see our screen, you can check out the website everydaysangelsart.com. You can also purchase the book According to My Angels, which is available on Amazon or directly from Alison. And you can reach out to Alison by email on everydayangels@btinternet.com. I think I got all your btinternet.com. So we thank you so much for being with us. We had a blast, and thank you for the event that we had back in Devon. It still brings out
that was a blast.
amazing memories. It was awesome, and hopefully we can get together again another time, either over here on this platform or directly in person somewhere in England. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Susie, and thanks to our listeners. And we'll see you next time. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks again.